a return to history doesn't work for us. If you look at the US relationship specifically, roughly, these aren't exact figures, but roughly we export about $9 billion worth of product, mainly agri, food, forestry, fish, wine, and high-valued manufacturing goods as well, and services, particularly education and tourism. And so you look at that and you think, well, what's it like in terms of the imports? Well, our imports of America is about 12 billion. So America has a trade surplus with us. So you would think rationally that would mean that we would be able to navigate this. It still will be hard. It's possible that some of our agri exporters will get hit with a tariff, but it's potentially manageable for us in terms of New Zealand exports to America. But to your point, the greater threat actually is what happens if the rest of the world starts turning inwards and suddenly we've got a highly protectionist global environment. That is not good for us, because invariably it'll make it harder for us to sell our products elsewhere.
Is there a chance that New Zealand's just a bit small and a bit nice to really attract much attention here and we fly under the radar in terms of being targeted for this type of thing?
Well, I think initially, yes. I think you can make that very hopeful argument in the short term, and I know there'll be huge work going on in Washington and our embassy over there, and indeed down in Wellington, to work with the people-to-people relationships that we have in Washington to try and enable that to be the case. But the challenge is when you see America becoming more imperialistic in its approach, not only to trade but also to geopolitics, there's no coincidence that in the last few days we've seen 3 Chinese warships trolling the Tasman Sea, firing rounds off to see if their guns work. This is all typical geopolitical muscular play, right? You've got Cook Islands being put under the ringer in terms of the relationship with China, massive impact for New Zealand. You've got Kiribati, you've got Samoa already heavily indebted. You've got America, clearly pivoting away from Europe with its own geopolitical challenges to this part of the world. And it's very difficult to see in the medium term how we avoid getting caught up in a China v. America spat. And that, I think, is probably the greatest challenge for New Zealand, because China is our largest export market, roughly $20 billion a year. I mentioned the US at $9 billion, second biggest, Australia just behind at 8.5. It's not good for this country if China and America are having essentially a cold war, with trade being its core focus, and they're our 2 leading trading partners. Doesn't matter how you cut that. That's tough for us.
Have you got, and just bringing it back to a local level, this is an exporting region. We've got a number of firms here that do an awesome job on the global stage. Have you got a message for them, or if you were them and you're around the board table, what would you be kind of concerned about from a risk point of view?
Well, I'm sure they're reflecting on these geopolitical and trade risks very acutely. The positive is that you don't trade with officials, you trade with people. It's people-to-people relationships, and so the strength of the relationships that New Zealand has, and our local Tauranga exporters have with their customers, with their importers, with their consumers, that becomes a critical pushback, if you like, against the sort of Washington agenda. And that does happen, right? Because yes, Trump's on his particular mission at the moment, but there is Congress will be all up for re-election in a year. The countdown's on. It's next year, next November, and then a third of the Senate will be up. And so you were already seeing, big groupings within America that traditionally support the Republicans going, hey, I was talking to someone just on the weekend that was big in agri in the West Coast, and of course the focus on immigration, and in particular the southern, the move of people from Mexico. That's a massive issue in California. And suddenly people are hiding, they're not turning up, whole city economies are under pressure. And so there you've got this dichotomy between the policy, but actually what happens on the ground. So the same sort of thing for New Zealand exporters. It's the strength of that relationship that you have in the country, because they want access to the New Zealand product, those Americans, because they know its quality, its reliability, it's good for their business. You want them to be a good, strong advocate for sensible policy. And the second thing, buckle in, because this is going to be a bouncy ride.
So what can we look forward to in the next little while of the Trump presidency? I mean, what conditions might need to be present for perhaps a little bit more of a rational approach, or a calming down of that provocative kind of nature that we've seen?
I wish I knew the answer to that, because you opened your good line of questioning with, what is the first month what you expected? And I said, no, it's way worse than what I expected. And the unpredictability of that worries me, because you can't sort of see, it doesn't follow the normal model of a new president coming in with a whole lot of anticipated and well-signalled reform, and it going through the process of being debated in the public and in the Congress. He's just doing this stuff, and frankly, whether it's constitutional or not doesn't seem to be particularly concerning him, and the Congress are just mute while it's all unfolding. So maybe one argument is eventually the courts will catch up with what is an overreach and what isn't, both domestically and externally. And of course, the rest of the world, once it gets over its sort of the shock and awe of Trump's approach, there are 180 independent actors out there who will all then act in their own self-interest. And so if America overreaches, which I believe they're doing at the moment, that will force other coalitions and other groups of countries to work out, well, how best do we navigate that? So I expect to see New Zealand and Australia become even stronger in terms of that relationship. We are an important market for Australia, and they're our third biggest, and they too are caught in the same position as we are. China, huge market on its left, historical market, and cultural links to the right with America. And so the two of us have to navigate it, and ideally we can navigate it more closely than we've done in the past.
And in New Zealand, I guess we're very concerned with what we're seeing around the trade side of things and tariffs and all of that. He seems to be doing a lot of stuff though, right? Where does this sit in his hierarchy of things that he's doing? He's having to go at the Ukraine, there's Israel, Gaza and all of that, there's some the Doge and all of that kind of stuff. Where does global trade sit? Is it lower down on his agenda, or is it up there?
I think it's up there. It's up there in the context of reversing, in his mind, America's decline, that America has not won through globalization. And so he wants a return to America first, America dominant. Yes, happy to have trade relationships with the rest of the world as long as they're trade surpluses, as long as his businesses, manufacturing and stuff, are protected from these emerging economies who can produce low quality product at half the price. Now, so in that sort of world, New Zealand can still navigate through, because we have a trade surplus. What we sell, we have sold for many, many years and have got very well established relationships and good reputation. He's not after New Zealand per se, but like I say, it's the ripple on effect that American first anti-globalization policy will have on the rest of the world, as they then respond by putting up their protections, if you like.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Todd. I know you're obviously very, very passionate about this subject. Obviously, members can go to your podcast.
Yes,
if they want to hear these relatively short answers.
Yeah, well, I was
translated into an hour or so.
Yes, well, I was told to be short, so this is me being short. But yes, so anyone watching this on LinkedIn, I always post a podcast once a week where we interview Americans about what on earth's going on in their country. And suffice to say, they're as surprised and bewildered, and in some cases quite frustrated as we are. But, last message really is stay positive. The world's a very fluid place. Change is constant. All those traits, but they're true. And who knows what we're going to see in another 6 to 12 months. So just be fleet of foot like we always are in New Zealand, because we've had to be.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.